Right. Good morning to all the distinguished delegates. After Adrian's very interesting presentation on ship values, we're going to speak a little bit more technical, but the issues we're going to speak, I think, will affect ship values quite a lot, things that are coming up. So what's the subject? New environmental regulations, technological and ship design innovations that may have a really transformational impact on the industry. I will start by saying a few words on this subject. I've worked in shipping for 20 years, not so much as a lot of you, but I have seen and realized that shipping is a traditional industry. It's the activity of transporting goods by sea has a history of several millennia, and the rules and practices that have been used have not really changed so much over this very large lifespan. So we're now speaking about game changers and things that will have transformational impact. Is it really the first time that this is happening? Has it not happened in the past? I think it has. Like, for example, centuries ago, we changed from the sail to the steam. So that was really a game changer. What happened then? The people that were able to adapt were the ones that got the game right. So this is what will happen now. But what is the main difference between what is happening now with environmental regulations and new technologies compared to what has happened in the past? The big difference, in my opinion, is that we don't have just one or two regulations. We have too many of them. And the fact that some of them are conflicting with each other, making decisions for ship owners very hard. Going past these environmental regulations that we're going to speak in a little while, there is technological advances in the industry. We're starting speaking about digitalization. We are seeing thoughts of unmanned ships, highly automated ships, and is really the industry ready to accept these changes? This is not coming from regulation, it's coming from technology advance. So, ship owners and managers have very tough decisions to make to adapt to the environmental regulations. And they have really to think about the future and how they're going to go on with their business. So I'm really honored today to have a panel of very distinguished speakers to speak about these regulations and the issues. Let me just briefly introduce. We have Mr. Chen Yuetao, is the Deputy General Manager of COSCO Ship Heavy Industry. Mr. Fabio Tagliavia is the Technical Group Director of Newport Shipping and President of ISIMA in Singapore as well, part of the D'Amico Group. Mr. Roy Yap is the Chief Operating Officer of Newport Shipping, and Mr. Theo Baltatzis, the General Manager of Technomar. I think that before going on with this discussion, Mr. Roy Yap has a short presentation. Is that right, Roy?
Yes, I do. It's more of an introduction.
Okay, can you please do this a little bit faster so that we don't lose time?
I will time myself for 4 minutes.
Okay, no problem. We'll continue with the discussion after that.
Sure, no problem. Is there a clicker so that I can move back and forth? Well, thank you for the floor. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Shanghai. My wife is Shanghainese, and I count Shanghai as my second home. Now, who we are. Newport Shipping is not a vanilla ship repair service provider, the additional flavor being integration with financial services. We cooperate with 6 shipyards globally and growing, 1 in Turkey, 3 in China, 2 in Southeast Asia, namely Singapore and Indonesia respectively, and ensure high standard service delivery across. We work with a host of specialists and supplier partners, passing down savings from aggregated volumes. We pioneer the concept of the all-in-one invoice, encompassing shipyard works, paint, spares, specialist works, and retrofits, deferring 60% of the invoice for up to 24 months. We are UK domiciled, hence all governance and warranties are under English law. What do? We are in the business of easing OPEX, operational expenditure, allowing our customers to pay as they earn. We recognize that shipyard cost is only a fraction of the total dry docking costs borne by the ship owner. Other major components, as I mentioned earlier, being paint supply, spares, specialty works, and retrofits. We do not interfere with existing paint agreements between ship owners and paint makers. We only finance it. We can order and deliver in advance all spares required by dry docking and undertake the warranties and liabilities within the contracted redelivery period of the ship or of the vessel. Specialist works like hatch covers, turbochargers, cargo pumps, and etc. can be included under the same invoice. Similarly, retrofit equipment like ballast water treatment systems and scrubbers also. How do we do it? Financing the all-in-one invoice allows the ship owner to pay as they earn. In this example of a 5-year-old dry bulk carrier dry docking, the ship owner only has to pay 40% payment before vessel departure, with the remaining in equal installments over 12 months at 1,100 USD a day, comfortably covered within the daily charter hire. In closing, I repeat our value proposition. Our strategic network of shipyards and still growing in the Pacific and Atlantic. Our payment deferral plan, 60% of dry dock invoice up to 24 months, and our all-in-one invoice, including dry docking costs beyond just shipyard costs. With that, I thank you, and I look forward to speaking to you all later.
Thank you very much, Roy. It's a good starter that you mentioned retrofits and equipment installation. So we'll start. I intend to start talking about the environmental regulations one by one, and I will start with the one that has been around for a while, but its final ratification has now led to gathering pace, and that's the ballast water management regulation. So let's see how ship owners and shipyards are gearing up and how ready they are for that. Let me start by asking Mr. Theo Baltatzis, as a ship owner, how far are you in the retrofit process? Have you selected suppliers, finalized your decisions, technologies? Can you please give us your position?
Thank you, Vassilis. Thank you for being here, Nicholas. It's a great opportunity to see our friends here in China, and I'll be very short, Vassilis, on that subject because it's an old story now.
Of course, yeah.
As a matter of fact, 7 years ago, when we carried a new building program of approximately 9 ships, we have installed ballast water treatment at that particular time, just being, let's say, pioneers and try to have the ultraviolet system. The ships were highly sophisticated container ships with tremendous amount of electrical power, which supports the UV choice. Nowadays, our fleet is a little bit more than 70 ships. 35 of them are containers and the rest are bulk carriers. So we are facing a challenge. And we believe that the choice of the specific system varies between the containers and the bulk carriers. All the containers that we have enormous amount of electrical power reserve, so UV could be a choice. On bulk carriers, though, where we have the issue of deballasting very quickly, we might move on other alternatives with less power consumption requirement, and the advantage that we are going to do the treatment when we ballast, and while on deballasting we can bypass the system. Right now, in the middle of signing a contract between two companies. One is going to serve the containers and the other one is going to serve the bulk carriers. And the specific spread of installing the systems due to a very well-planned procedure that we implemented a couple of years ago is going to be done during special survey dry dockings. And just for the record, this year we have only to do about 19 of them. Thank you, Vassilis.
Thank you. Theo, I remember you being one of the first ones to install and operate systems. So we had that discussion, I remember, in technical committees in the past. So may I ask a similar question to Mr. Tagliavia? I mean, what is your strategy on retrofitting your fleet?
Very good morning to everybody. Briefly, the ballast water treatment has been very much confusing from the technical perspective because on top of the IMO regulation, as you know, the USCG came with its own regulation, in a way a little bit on the mess, not clear from the beginning, in particular the approach when the system has to be implemented and approved. And nowadays more restrictions are coming on the operational point of view. The issue is not an easy issue, technically speaking. There are many systems in the market. To make a choice, it is difficult, especially for those vessels that have a random trade, because a certain water then can definitely affect the operational of the system. When we talk about muddy water in some part of China, some part of India, or in the river, definitely this can be an issue affecting the operational performance of your system. What I do recommend is, beside the technical choice about the system, is to really train your crew, because the operational aspects are very much important. Your crew must be extremely familiar with the system and extremely familiar with any trouble shooting solution. The good news is, compared when the system was coming into the regulation, is that definitely the price came down very much. I do remember where at the beginning we were talking about over $1 million for a system, and nowadays the price is coming very much down, even below the $200,000 US dollar. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabio. I know I would like to ask Mr. Chen, although I understand that COSCO is more involved in new construction. I don't know if you can give us an opinion about Chinese yards in general, and if they are ready to handle, because we will be expecting a large surge and a lot of number of retrofits to be done, and how ready they are to handle a big demand.
Good morning, everybody. It's allowed to speak Chinese. I think we can see
Yes, of course, yeah, please.
其实在中国，我们在这方面，就是从修理改装上来讲的话呢，是有30多家修船厂。那么就我们集团自己来讲，我们有7家船厂。对于这个工作，其实在3年多前已经都开始了。从船厂方面，我认为是已经做好了充分的准备。目前实际上在进行这一方面做的，这主要还是一些相对来说年龄，这个船龄比较小的一些船队在做这些改装。 那么在新造船方面，实际上现在所有的新的设计，基本上船都在考虑做这个压缩式处理装置。那么当然不同的就是再去选 UV 的或者电解的等等这各种形式，取决于跟船厂的一个沟通，跟船东的一个沟通嘛。OK。
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Can I ask Mr. Tagliavia, since we're speaking about new construction, are you, when you have a new building project, are you actively engaged in the selection of the system, or just accept or discuss what is offered by the yard?
No, definitely we are very much in discussing with the yard in the several options. Today the yard, in our experience, have been very flexible in offer possible solution. Definitely, I do suggest that today, when you place an order for new buildings, among the makers, you have to select only those that has already an USG approval, because still there is a gray area whether other makers are going to have the approval from Coast Guard. So far, there are only 6 makers that have been approved. Another 2 or 3 are in the pipeline. I do expect that more are coming. Probably today the best solution is to postpone as much as possible the selection of the equipment in order to have a better choice and waiting as long as it is possible, waiting for a larger number of makers approved by US Coast Guard.
Thank you. On the other hand, Mr. Chen, are the shipyards ready to accept what the owner is proposing? Because you understand they may want a uniformity of systems installed so that their crews are more easy to operate. So how flexible are Chinese yards in accepting what the owner is asking to be installed?
从中国船厂的角度来讲，当然每一个设计或者船厂都有自己更喜欢 perfect 的这个厂商或者什么，但是我觉得中国船厂大部分在这个方案上是选择是灵活的，都是基本能够接受客户的一些要求。
Well, that is good news. Thank you. It's good news for the owner. Can I ask Theo, as you are quite experienced, what is your experience on the reliability of the systems so far?
That's a very good question. I have to say that when we did this step and chose one water ballast system 7 years ago, at that particular time there weren't any approvals from the US Coast Guard. So we took a gamble and we put this gamble on the table by negotiating a huge reduction in prices from one of the most prominent North European suppliers. And we did achieve, despite all odds, an extremely competitive rate of all this equipment. Up to now, I have to say that we have never had any problem on reliability. However, if I may say so, the most important issue is the network of service engineers around the world. Definitely these are equipment that they're going to fail, and the support is needed, especially in the US, and we had just one experience and we were quite happy. So reliability wise, at least for the systems that we have installed up to now, is quite good, and the network seems that worked up to now. But network of service engineer is very important on any choice you make. Needless to say that the US Coast Guard approval for our choice is very, very important.
Thank you. That is also good news because we heard some stories of issues with systems and systems that are not being worked or not being operated because of unreliability. I would like to ask a question to Mr. Yap, which is applicable also to all kinds of retrofits that we're going to discuss. Owners have to pay for it. So I understand you have solutions for that?
Yes, we do. I think the topic being game-changing, we're talking about disruptive innovation, does not only lend itself to technological innovation. We encourage, thoughts on financial services innovation, and of course also in supply chain. So with regards to the topic on ballast water treatment systems, I think technologically it cannot be any better. We're only talking about certification right now. So the technology is actually really proven. Okay, it's about servicing it, installing it. What of course the ship owner always asks, okay, who's going to pay for this? This is a topic brought up quite often in all the forums, and I know we're going to talk about scrubbers later. So there's going to be discussion on that also. So we believe that easing the operational cash flows makes retrofits easier to access, okay, and absorb across the life of the vessel. Thanks.
Thank you for this information, Roy. Let's move on to the emissions regulations, which are quite more serious subject. I mean, ballast water treatment has been there and it's been applied, but this is coming up and it's going to create bigger issues, I think. Starting with NOx, this is mainly an engine manufacturer issue, but since there are certain solutions proposed to satisfy the NOx requirement, which is mainly for big engines, selective catalytic reaction or exhaust gas recirculation. Can I ask the owners who may have new building projects, Mr. Tagliavia, are you fully aware of the pros and cons of these new two technologies, and do you have a preference?
Okay, definitely the NOx emission has made a big change on the ship design. In particular, to be clear, today the NOx emission has been implemented for new vessel trading in NICA area in the US, and theoretically, for those vessels that are not in compliance with the Tier 3 as a new vessel, okay, they cannot trade in such area. The technical solution, to me, appear, honestly speaking, quite gray area, in the sense both solution, the SCR, the catalytic element, or the exhaust gas recirculation, in my opinion, for what we have seen in terms of workshop testing and the installation on board, still need some improvement, and probably need also a lot of improvement from the regulation prospecting arrangement on board, because you have some workshop test which is done with certain arrangement, which is not definitely the same arrangement that we are going to have on board. So the result and the performance in perspective of NOx emission, to me, is quite adapt. To be clear, today a vessel in compliance with the Tier 3 is from the technical arrangement and from the consumption performance, it's definitely a vessel penalized compared a vessel that is Tier 2.
Right.
The SCR, or the exhaust gas recirculation, is a complex system and has several operational issues, again, which are going to be a problem for the crew on board, okay, and definitely require maintenance in the time and some additional cost. And compare a Tier 2 vessel, definitely the vessel is going to be penalized.
Very, very interesting, your insight. Let me ask Mr. Chen, are the shipyards have fully integrated these technologies into the design in terms of space arrangement and all that in the new designs for Tier 3?
作为造船厂，现在新船型设计上基本上都是要考虑去满足 Tier 3，包括因规范已经设。就刚才传东所讲的，确实现在这个规范，目前在适用上的整个这个方案呢，还是相对比较复杂。那么船厂现在主要是依赖于这个主机厂商，所推荐，比如说 SCR 或者 EGR 这种方式。当然也有一些船东做了一些比较保守一点的选择，现在在做一些这种就是 ready 的这种方案。 也有一个观望的，因为确实技术也有个发展，包括成本，也有可能有一个变化。其实作为船厂来讲，更多的是依赖于这个设备供应商的一个技术的改进。
That is a very good point, Mr. Chen, all that, and I agree with you. This is something that we see in new regulations. New regulations are being applied without the technology being mature and ready for it, so this is why we're seeing all these problems. I will move briefly to the subject of LNG and ask the panelists a very simple question. Let me ask Mr. Baltatzis, do you think that LNG is the fuel of the future?
It looks like it's going to be the fuel of the future, but quite frankly, I do not believe so. There are the obvious, let's say, cheap supply of LNG nowadays. This might change because local power stations are more and more expanding in that area, so the unit price might change. That's step number one. Step number two, you have all the rest are extremely expensive. Installation-wise, on board the ship, it's quite expensive and quite complicated, at least for our standards. Networking and supply chain of LNG is something that a tremendous amount of money have to be invested, a lot more than ship owners they have to invest. So all the benefits, economical ones, are there to start with. However, there's a lot of ground to be covered. Additionally, we have to remember that LNG has particularly a lot of methane in it. And during tests, what we have discovered, especially on autocycle engines using LNG, there is a methane slippage. This methane slippage is a small proportion, but as you know, methane is 25 times more drastic than CO2. So greenhouse gases might be affected. I believe that it will come, but it will take a lot of time, probably not in my time.
Very good insight on methane slip, Theo, thank you. Actually, the fact that there is methane slip negates the whole story about greenhouse gas emissions, but that's a very big discussion, so we'll not go into it now. Can I ask the yards if they are ready to offer solutions for vessels using LNG and also new designs for bunkering ships when a network will be available for LNG? For bunkering. Oh, yeah, of course.
其实对于 LNG 这个改装方案，应该来说，现在不是说所有的船厂现在都具备这种能力。在国内，应该最开始设计 LNG 建造的是我们那个沪东船厂。那么，当然现在我们可以看到，越来越多的船厂在设计。到 LNG 的这个船型的建造，包括最近过去这1年多来，我们可以感觉到越来越多的就是 LNG 推进的双燃料的这种解决方案，包括一些 LNG ready 的这种方案的推进，以及现在也有了一些 LNG bunker 这个船舶建造的需求。从现在来看，我觉得中国船厂是正在开始的一个路上。随着现在去年。已经中国有船厂接了很多大型集装箱船的这种双燃料的解决方案，应该从这个角度来说，已经具备了，就是中国的船厂已经具备了去建造这个 LNG 船的这种能力。从现在来看，市场的需求也越来越多。当然，就像刚才传统方面所讲的，对于 LNG 的供应是一个非常复杂的一个环节，从 LNG 船的运输。FSRU 等等这一系列需要很多，还有很长的路要走。当然到这个时候是，先有鸡还是先有蛋？所以我觉得这个是有一个共同发展的过程。最近包括我们自己也看到一些大型的油的公司，像道达尔啊、Shell 也跟一些船东签了这个供气的一些合同。当然，我认为如果有这样的一个背景的话。可能会有越来越多的对于 LNG 船舶建造的需求，有了这种需求，我认为从技术方面，船厂包括一些设计院所，包括一些这个设备的提供商，会更有动力去发展这型的船。可能在未来的2年，我个人感觉在未来的2年左右，可能会有越来越多的需求。
Yes, the chicken and egg situation, thank you very much for that. That's quite true. And I just want to say that we are seeing this cycle of chicken and egg being broken and starting to be broken for some cases. I mean, we are proud to have as Bureau Veritas a large project by CMA-CCM with 22,000 TEU vessels powered by LNG and built in China. So that is one good example of cooperation between the ship owner and the supplier of the fuel. Maybe we'll see more of that later. Let me ask Roy, are you ready to support use of LNG or retrofit, small or large?
Sorry. Oh, yeah. Sorry, we have one over here. At least in my opinion, I don't foresee that there will be re-enginings for LNG as fuel. That, of course, is a very, very big conversion job. It makes more sense, of course, for vessels that are already built with LNG engines or dual fuel engines. So that would be actually a more new building consideration than a ship repair retrofit consideration.
Yeah, that's true indeed. Let me go to the other option of compliance, scrubbers. I was happy to see, I was fortunate in the previous days. I visited the shipyard and witnessed the retrofit of a scrubber, so that was a good experience. There are studies that show that the return on investment for a scrubber installation for a larger vessel can be relatively short and will start between 1 or 2 years. Theo, what is your opinion on that? Is it really the way to go? Is it a good choice?
Mathematics are right. Indeed, depending on the size of the engine, scrubbers could pay back 2.5 years, maximum 3. However, who's going to pay for the installation of a scrubber nowadays? We believe that the best policy is wait and see. It's a lot easier for us because we are not having any new buildings nowadays. So we would have been puzzled if we had to carry out a new building project right now. However, on our fleet, we will not move into the scrubber, at least now. So if you ask me now, scrubbers are deleted. We do follow our market leader on containers. Maersk have decided and announced that they will not fit scrubbers. On the other hand, of course, CMA-SSM, another customer of ours, is going towards the solution of scrubber. I believe, Vassilis, that we have to combine all these regulations and try to clear the uncertainty that is over us. We cannot see specific NOx and take out SOx. We cannot see SOx and just forget about green gas coming into effect right now. And as you probably know, the last MEPC 72 in 12th of April this year has already put down the roadmap for greenhouse gases. So we have to see all of them together, and most likely, as you know, that installing scrubbers, you cannot really use SCR for NOx prevention unless you do it in between the engine and the turbocharger, which creates more complications, and the yards have to be very ingenious in order to sort out these technical issues. But as far as we are concerned, as of today, scrubbers are out of the question, and we'll stick to the low sulfur fuel that is going to come in the market. Thank you.
Thank you, Theo. As you said, you are going to use low sulfur fuel. Do you believe that there's going to be enough availability of that fuel?
I can reverse the question. Are you sure it's going to be enough availability of high sulfur fuel in the next 10 years?
That is a gamble, yes.
That's a gamble.
Okay. We don't have much time to go on, so I also want to touch briefly on the new technologies and the fact that the IMO very recently have decided a very ambitious program of decarbonization in shipping. There has been a decision to reduce greenhouse gases emissions by shipping by 2050 to 50% compared to 2008. Okay, that's a long way to go, but still it's quite an ambitious program. So how do we do it? I understand, okay, just operational measures like slow steaming are easy to adapt, but what about new technologies? I think that in terms of propulsion efficiency, we've reached a point where we cannot go much further in reducing ships' resistance. So we have to look at propulsion systems and new technologies there. May I ask the shipyards, how far advanced are you in research about alternative propulsions like batteries and hybrid propulsions? Okay, this is applicable to smaller ships right now, but what is your point of research for that?
我觉得像这个电池推进，包括现在一些新的能源，像太阳能等等，现在已经开始在一些应用，就刚刚主持人所讲的，其实更多的是在一些比较小型的船舶，或者一些稍微特种船上面，相对应用在开始应用。对于这个常规的3兆主力商船，目前我个人觉得从动力应用上还不是特别成熟，尤其是还取决于船东的一个选择，包括它的投入跟它所得到回报的这个回收的年限，可能还需要一段比较长的路要走。
Okay, we do have time though, so I hope that technology will have time to adapt to that, and not like the situation where we are now with NOx and SOx. Another big game changer, which will be discussed later, is digitalization and automation in ships, and the new technologies leading to probably very soon unmanned ships. Can I ask Mr. Tagliavia what is his opinion? Are we going to see very soon unmanned ships or highly automated ships?
A good question. In my experience, I have seen that the best and positive feedback from crew come from the simplest vessel. Today, more equipment we put on board, more complex system we put on board, it will be an issue again with the crew. Probably we have to focus in the more simple system. I'm not sure whether automation is the solution, okay? But definitely we have to make a vessel in a very easy and friendly way to operate.
Thank you. Theo, do you see unmanned ships in the near future?
I'm a little bit old-fashioned. Quite frankly, I do not see any unmanned ships in the near future. And near future, I mean for the next 10 years. Nevertheless, it is something that it is going to come, at least for specific areas that they are going to be a lot easier to control and more regulated. For the big ones, and quite frankly, I don't see that coming, at least for the next 10-15 years.
Well, it would definitely be quite interesting to look into those developments. We have a few some time if there is any questions from the audience for the speakers, please.
Vassilis, can I just say something that
I've
read it very recently, and it's quite interesting. I've read that Osima, they are developing a new marine fuel. And this marine fuel sounds like it's going to be for everything. SOx, NOx, reduce also greenhouse gas emissions. It is a mixture of one product which is called LCO, light cycle oil, which is a secondary product from the refineries, and also one product called GTL, gas to liquid, which is coming from natural gas, and also add water. And according to the test they've carried out, one of your competitors, DNVGL, they say that the results are quite good to start with. Of course, there's a long way to go. Now coming back to the very, assume that all these technical problems are resolved, coming back to the cost, of course it's going to be a lot expensive than heavy fuel nowadays. However, they say it's going to be less expensive than low sulfur marine gas oil. So let's wait and see. Miracles might happen.
Very, very interesting. Gentlemen, please.
Question for the audience. Are there any owners here buying scrubbers? Anyone?
Okay, actually we have currently an experience, we are having a 30 new building fitted with the scrubber. Of course, I don't have the crystal ball to understand and to see what is going to be in the future, but in our experience, we see that a scrubber could be an option. And when we talk about a new building, coming back to what Theo was saying before, that probably for the new building could be an option to have the scrubber, I can say you that as far as concerned, the cost is no longer a black box. Today, the scrubber, in our experience, has a cost in new building, an open loop system, has a cost of around 4% of vessel value. And in this number, I do believe that it makes sense to consider this option when you do a new building, because maybe tomorrow, if the market gives you a chance, you can get a premium. What I do suggest that I saw many ship owners very much excited about scrubber, especially from the commercial point of view. They are looking into a vessel flexible as much as possible. When we talk about scrubber, we have to really focus on what is the main saving that you can get from the scrubber. Having regard to the vessel trade, of course, and heavy regards to the equipment and machinery that you want to connect to the scrubber. Probably I can say that for a small consumption, let's say within 20 tons per day, the scrubber is not a solution, but for an higher consumption in the overall picture of the vessel, I mean main engine, boiler and auxiliary, above 25 tons, maybe the scrubber could be an option.
Fabio, allow me to add a little bit more. We forget something in the panel here, that definitely there are also a lot of stakeholders that they play a very important role in our decision making, and I'm talking about refineries, suppliers and charterers, and they are indeed there in order to make us take a decision. As long as refineries can produce low sulfur oil that eventually is going to be reasonably cheap, as long as charterers are willing to reduce, let's say, speed for specific trades, and suppliers around the world, they have availability of such product, then the decision goes towards away from scrubbers. However, if we move the other way around, then scrubber could be a very good option. There are recent studies saying that in 2019, normal high sulfur fuel as we know it right now is going to be consumed for the marine industry about 250 million tons. That's what they say. And the estimation is for 2024 that is going to be down to 40 million tons. So that gives a trend that refineries or stakeholders are moving towards the choice of using low sulfur fuel instead of going towards the direction of scrubber. This might change, of course. However, I believe that there is no silver bullet that will assist us in order to take a decision right now. So the best probably scenario is just wait and see how things are evolving. Thank you.
Thank you all. I'm afraid our time's up. We may have more discussion on these issues during the break. Thank you very much to the speakers. You want to add something?
Yes, just a very quick mention on the scrubbers. For those ship owners who are considering scrubber installation, bear in mind lead time. The top makers are bordering on 10 to 12 months right now. Scrubbers being very proven, mature technologies, of course, and anywhere else in between would be able to help you. Second thing, of course, is for retrofits, coordination with the shipyard, engineering, very important, 3D scanning. So bear that in mind when you consider your retrofits. Thank you.
I don't know if Mr. Chen has anything to add. Okay. Thank you very much, people. Thank you.